I never thought I'd be the guy writing something like this, but here I am. My name's Jason, and I've been with my wife Emily for about 7 years now. Things weren't perfect, but I thought we had a solid marriage. She's a firecracker, beautiful, sharp-tongued, always had a way of making me feel like I was the luckiest guy alive. But over the last few months, I started noticing tiny cracks in that perfect picture I had of us. Little things. She was secretive with her phone more than usual, always saying she was working late or meeting with clients. I shrugged it off at first, convincing myself she was just busy or stressed. But then she started disappearing for hours at a time, claiming she was at work or running errands. I mean, I get that people can have busy lives, but her stories started to feel too thin. One night I came home early from work, and the house was eerily quiet. Usually Emily would be in the kitchen or she'd be on the couch scrolling through her phone. Instead, the house was dead silent, and I figured she was out, which was nothing unusual anymore. I decided to wait it out in the living room, hoping to surprise her, maybe catch her in a good mood. That's when I noticed her phone left face down on the coffee table. I wasn't snooping, I swear, but I was curious. I picked it up and scrolled through her notifications. Nothing unusual at first, business emails, a few texts from her friends. Then I saw a message that made my blood run cold. It was from someone named Lisa, and it was just a simple, "Can't wait to see you tonight. Don't be late." My stomach dropped. Lisa was her coworker, a bitchy, overly confident girl who's always been a bit too flirty. I'd seen her give Emily that look, that "I know something you do" look, 1,000 times. I couldn't believe what I was reading. My wife Emily was sneaking off to meet her coworker Lisa behind my back. I sat there, stunned, trying to process it. My first instinct was to confront her right then, but I knew I needed more proof. I started digging through her messages, her emails, her calendar, anything I could find. Turns out, it wasn't just one night, and it wasn't just a one time. Over the past 3 or 4 months, she'd been meeting Lisa after hours, sometimes late into the night, sometimes even at her apartment. I found messages where she was lying about going to a friend's birthday party or a work event, but the truth was clear. She was with Lisa and they were having sex, I'm sure of it. I felt like my heart was being torn out. How could she do this? After everything we'd been through, after all I'd done, it felt like a punch to the gut every time I thought about it. After I uncovered all this, I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there in the dark, replaying everything I found, feeling like I'd been hit by a freight train. The betrayal hit me hard. I kept asking myself how I missed the signs, how I didn't see it coming. I mean, she was bitchy and manipulative, always good at hiding her true self behind that sharp tongue and her pretty face. I thought I knew her, but apparently I didn't know anything. I kept thinking about the nights she'd disappear, the excuses she'd make, and now I know she was lying. Straight to my face. Next morning I decided I had to confront her. I didn't want to do it right away, but I knew I couldn't keep pretending I didn't know. I waited until she came home from her meeting and I was ready. I didn't yell or scream, I just looked her in the eyes and asked, "Who is Lisa to you?" Her face shifted instantly. That bitchy smirk she always had when she thought she was winning, that was gone. Instead, she looked surprised, then annoyed. "What are you talking about, Jason?" "You're crazy," she snapped, brushing past me like I was insignificant. I held up her phone and I showed her the messages. Her eyes widened and she started lying faster than I could process. "It's nothing, just some girl from work. We're just friends, I swear. It's not what you think, you're overreacting. Maybe you're jealous or maybe you're just insecure." That's when I lost it. I told her I'd seen enough, that I knew everything, about their meetings, the sex, everything. Her face turned red with anger, but she kept lying, spinning her usual bullshit about how she was just confused, stressed, and none of it was serious, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I was furious, hurt, and feeling so betrayed I thought I might throw up. I told her I couldn't do this anymore, how she'd broken the trust that took years to build. Her laugh, that bitchy, dismissive laugh, made me realize she had zero remorse. She said I was being paranoid, that I was just jealous of Lisa, and that I should get a grip because sex with Lisa isn't a big deal. That was the moment I knew she didn't care. She thought she could just lie her way out of it like she always did and I'd accept it. But I couldn't. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach again and again, and I knew I had to do something. something I hadn't planned on until I saw her leaving that house at dawn that morning, looking like she'd just done something terrible. The days that followed were a blur. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, and I kept replaying everything in my head. Her lies, her sneaking around, the sex, the way she looked when she knew she was getting away. With it, I felt a mixture of rage and deep sadness. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I could be so blind. I thought about all the good times, all the promises we made, and how she just threw it all away for some coworker she probably thought was hotter or more exciting. I decided I needed to confront her again, but this time with a plan. I wanted to catch her in the act if I could, or at least get her to admit the truth outright. So I started watching her, following her phone records, checking her location, anything to find out exactly how deep she was into this affair. I even installed a GPS on her car, which felt like stalking, but honestly, I didn't care anymore. I was desperate to get answers. And sure enough, a week later, I followed her to a cheap motel about 20 miles out of town. She was meeting Lisa again. I could see her through the window, leaning into her with that fake smile that I now knew was just a mask. I took pictures, a lot of them. I wanted proof she couldn't deny. Or spin away. I stood there in my car, trembling with rage and heartbreak, realizing that my wife had been lying to me for months. She'd been having sex with Lisa, probably leading some double life, and I was just the fool who loved her. When I finally gathered the courage, I stormed into that motel, not knowing what I'd do once I saw her. I just knew I couldn't let her keep lying. She saw me and froze. Her face crumpled for a second, and then that same bitchy smirk appeared. "Jason, what are you doing here?" she asked, voice dripping with that fake sweetness she always used when she was trying to manipulate someone. I didn't give her the chance to lie again. I pulled out the pictures and I told her I knew everything. About Lisa, about the sex, about everything. Her eyes widened in that moment, and for a second I thought she might break down, but she just looked me in the eyes and started spinning her usual bullshit. She said she was just having fun, that I was overreacting, and that Lisa was just a friend who was helping her through a tough time. I couldn't believe her lies. It was like talking to a damn wall. I told her I was done, that I couldn't trust her anymore, that she had destroyed what little was left of our marriage. She tried to deny it, of course, but she knew the jig was up. That day, I felt like I'd lost myself, lost any respect I had left for her. It was the strangest feeling, part anger, part heartbreak, part relief that I finally knew the truth. But mostly, I was just numb. I knew I couldn't keep pretending this wasn't real. I had to decide what was next. After that confrontation at the motel, I felt like I was walking around in a fog. The anger was still there, but underneath it, there was this overwhelming sense of betrayal and sadness. I kept replaying everything in my head, her lies, her sneaking around, her fake tears when I caught her. It was like she'd been playing me for a fool all these years and I hadn't seen it. That realization hit me hardest. How could I have been so blind? How could I have trusted someone who clearly didn't care about me? The worst part was the feeling of loss, not just of my wife, but of the life I thought we had built. I started questioning myself. Was I not enough? Did I do something wrong? But deep down, I knew she was the one at fault. She was the one who lied, who cheated, who thought she could get away with it. I also knew I was angry, but I didn't want to make any rash decisions right away. I needed time to think, to process everything. So I packed a bag, moved out of the house, and stayed with a friend for a few days. I needed space from her, from all the lies and the hurt. During those days, I kept thinking about what I should do next. I was hurt but also furious. I wanted to make her pay, to let her feel what I was feeling: betrayal, shame, heartbreak. I started planning how I was going to handle the aftermath. I knew I couldn't just walk away without making her realize the damage she'd done. I also knew I didn't want to be with someone who thought cheating was okay, who lied and manipulated me for months. I started contemplating legal options, how to get a divorce, and what I'd need to do to make her pay legally if it came to that. That night I sat alone, staring at my phone, and finally called a lawyer. I told him everything about her affair, her lies, the evidence I had collected. I wanted to know what my options were, how I could protect myself, and what the process of ending this marriage would look like. As I listened to him explain the legal steps, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief because I finally knew the truth, and dread because I knew this was only the beginning of a long, painful process. I also knew I'd have to face her and tell her I was done. I wasn't sure how she'd react, but I was certain she'd try to manipulate or guilt me into staying. I had to be prepared for that. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. I felt like my world was crumbling, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I knew I couldn't keep pretending that this wasn't happening, that I was okay with her. Cheating, I was. I was angry, broken, and ready to take back control of my life. Whatever came next, I knew I had to stand firm. I couldn't let her keep lying to herself or to me anymore. The day I finally decided to confront her again, my stomach was in knots. I knew she'd try to lie her way out of it, but I didn't care anymore. I was done being manipulated. I told her I knew everything. About Lisa, the meetings, the sex, the lies. She looked me dead in the eyes and rolled her eyes like I was some insecure idiot. "Jason, you're overreacting," she said with that bitchy tone she always used when she thought she was winning. "You don't know what you're talking about. Lisa's just a friend. We're just talking about work stuff. You're jealous, that's all." I couldn't believe her. I pulled out the evidence I had collected, screenshots, photos, even her own damn messages, and laid them out on the table. Her face flickered with a mix of anger and annoyance, but she stayed firm. "You're crazy, Jason. You're always accusing me of stuff I didn't do. Maybe you're the one who's cheating. Maybe this is just your way of lashing out because I work late sometimes." Her words hit like a slap. I saw her trying to gaslight me, trying to turn the tables, but I wasn't falling for it. I told her I was done. Done with her lies, her manipulation, her cheating. That day, she finally snapped. She went into a full-blown bitchy tantrum, screaming about how I was crazy, how she deserves better, and that I was just jealous of Lisa because I can't satisfy her anymore. The worst part was the look in her eyes, like she genuinely thought she could get away with this, that she could keep lying and I'd just accept it. I told her I was leaving, that I wanted a divorce, and that I was done playing her game. She yelled, called me desperate, pathetic, and said I was making a mistake. But I didn't care. Honestly, I felt empty, like I'd just lost the biggest part of myself, but I also knew this was the only way to reclaim some shred of dignity. So I made my decision. I filed for divorce and I moved out for good. I cut all contact. I knew she'd try to manipulate me into staying, or worse, try to guilt me, but I didn't want to hear it. All I wanted was peace, and to start healing from this nightmare she'd created. I realized that I'd been too trusting, too naive, but I also learned that sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones that make you stronger. I was hurt, yes, but I was also determined to rebuild my life from the ground up. I promised myself I wouldn't let her define my happiness anymore. No matter what, I was going to come out of this better, wiser, stronger, and finally free. Now looking back, I realize how much this whole experience changed me. At first I was broken, humiliated, feeling like I'd lost everything I cared about. But over time I started to rebuild. No contact, no more lies, no more pretending I was okay with her betrayal. I focused on myself, my job, my friends. The pain never completely went away, but I learned to live with it. The thing is, I can't help but think about how naive I was, trusting someone who clearly had no respect for me. But I also learned a lot about boundaries, about recognizing red flags, about never ignoring that little voice in your head that says something's off. One thing I want to say to anyone going through something similar: trust yourself. If you even suspect something's wrong, don't dismiss it. Dig, ask questions, get the proof if you need it. Because the truth, as painful as it is always better than living in denial. And if you find out someone been lying, cheating, or sneaking around, don't be afraid to walk away. You deserve someone who respects you, who values honesty and loyalty. I've come to understand that you can survive betrayal, and sometimes it's the hardest lessons that make you stronger. I don't regret what I went through because it taught me what I truly want and what I won't tolerate. I'm still healing, still trying to trust again, but I'm moving forward. I know I'll be okay. And if there's one thing I want everyone in my shoes to remember: never settle for fake love or lies. You're better than that. You deserve genuine respect, trust, and someone who's willing to build with you, not tear you down behind your back.